Running?
Yep.
Okay. First thing you want to do is make sure the power's cut off. So that's your cue to go see if the power's cut off.
It is.
Okay. So there's no way that this will run. Just for safe measure, you push in your safety stops. Alright, so that this thing will not run. Okay. We've opened the hood. There is one bolt holding the hood. I used this key. Now you need to take this orange thing off. Alright? This says in 4 different languages, but English, knife projection is 1 millimeter. The knives are 1 millimeter above the cutter head, and that is established by this jig right here. There's no guesswork. It's all right here. Okay? If you mess with these nuts, you're going to mess everything up. So don't touch these nuts. Okay? This is, I think, is a brass bolt. They will wear over time, but if you touch it, you'll screw everything up, and then you'll have to run away. I believe that's going to be a 6 millimeter. Just leave. 6 millimeter to get these apart. I think this is a 6 millimeter too. I think. No, that's going to be smaller naturally. It's probably a 5. Yes, we have a winner. So that's a 5. And of course, it's too stubby and small. You got to take this, do hang this off, and there's another one out here. Okay, there's a Allen bolt and a washer, and then in here there's the same thing. Okay, and you don't want to lose any of that. There's no washer in this because that got lost previously. Alright, set this aside. Now we've got this, and this comes off with one 6 millimeter hex key or bolt. Okay, this is just a guard, and it conducts the chips out through the chute. That's what this is. This you lift up on the left end and pull the pins out of the locating holes. Okay, that's all there is to that, and that's the cutter head. Now, this is the same thing. These are not pre-labeled, but someone already went through here and labeled them. And we'll start off with number 1. There's 4 knives. Okay. This one here, you do not have to register top dead center. This jig does it all for you. Okay. So, it might take me a minute to figure out how this goes on. Jib bar slot. That's where this pin registers. Okay. So that locates in there. These locate on the ends. Okay, you want to get everything loose, and you want to make sure that this is going to rotate, and this will actually lock the cutter head. Okay? I've written down tighten knife and loosen knife on this jig, and that's the direction that you'll be reading it from. And this is the correct location of this jig on this machine. Okay, this pin has to be in here, and if you're not careful, rotating this head with these bolts contacting the knives will wear the knife out. All right, so you want to be once you get it located, you want to make sure that you're not going to move the cutter head. The other thing is, I think I load the back, because there's a lot of slop in this jig. And I think I loaded it towards the back. Shut that down. In my notes that I had on this machine, I had to go dig them up so that I could remember what I did here. I said load jig towards infeed side of planer. This is the infeed side, so instead of pushing this, excuse me, instead of excuse me, instead of pushing this towards the back, I load it towards the front. And you can see how much slop there is in that. Load it towards the front. And then tighten down. And if you do that on every one, then all the knives will be set the same way. This has to be down in there, and that will lock the cutter head. Okay? What you need to do first is raise this up and get the knife, the old knife out is what has to happen next. Okay? So there's a wrench that's thin and skinny, and it'll fit in here. And tighten the knife, loosen the knife, so we have to move this way. And anytime you move this, if you can move away from the knife, if you're pushing down towards the knife, you're going to get cut. If you lift away, if the wrench slips off, you won't hit the knife. Not that that's ever happened to me before. And these are on super, super tight. Which they don't need to be that tight. Ow. Okay, so now that all the bolts are broken free, you want to turn them in a little bit to loosen them, and then you'll notice you're loose because the spring action will push the old knife out. And now we take out the old knife. Okay, and we compare it with the new ones. And the new ones are just a little bit shorter, but that's not a big deal. Okay, so that's an old knife, and it is beat to hell. Carefully, make sure that it's free of rust, and all the nuts look like they don't need to be lubricated. They're all nice and free looking. And inside here, you have two springs, and the springs will push the knife up against these registration bolts. Okay, you don't want to blast air in here with the springs, otherwise they will go flying, and you really, 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 really need them to get this to be set up, especially if you're running out of time. So that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that. Let's get some air and kill that. I've taken the time to blow the dust and everything out of the groove on the cutter head, and I've saved my springs. Now you need to put them back in. I'll use the needle nose pliers because my fingers aren't small enough to get in there. Okay, great. You do the jib bar inspection. Sometimes you'll have to blow these off. Sometimes you'll need to get crud cutter or something in here to get the gum and sap and other deposits out of here to get that nice and clean. Because doesn't look like we need to. So we'll put this in. Ow. Then we'll get a new knife. Here again, we probably should screw these in a little bit more. Make sure there's plenty of clearance for the knife. And we'll stick this in like that. And then the new knives again, they've got this rubber safety stuff on them, which you want to take off and discard. Don't forget, these are mighty sharp. Okay. So take a new knife, or a freshly sharpened knife. Look at it. I need a rag. It's over here. They would rust by the time you needed them. Okay, so you slip the knife in, and then you can use your fingers or a block of wood, but you'll see that it's contacting the springs, and it's using the springs right now. You see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, push it down. Actually, what we should do is bring these nuts out. Bring the the jib bar and gib bar bolts out so that they're just touching, so that it's a little bit easier to do that now than it is after you slide this into place and register it. Don't forget there's two at the very end, or one at each very end, I should say. And to tighten the knife, we're moving this way, in this direction. Okay, you got to make sure that you're not too tight so that you can't push this down. And apparently I'm too tight, so we back out. If you can't push the knife down, this is not going to work. And you might even have to push it down with a block of wood. Alright, we're back in business. Okay? You can push the knife down. Now it's down too far, but don't worry about that. Register it. Now you got to go back in here and undo the bolts so that the knife springs back up and hits the registration, these nuts. Okay? Because that's what you're registering to. These are brass, so you don't have to worry about chipping. But you hear that? We're there. Okay? Now I know my knife is hitting these bolts. Now I can bring and start to tighten the knives. I work